I was folding laundry in my kitchen when my phone rang, and I could tell from Sarah's tone that something was wrong. My younger sister had that particular edge to her voice that I recognized from childhood, the one she used when she was about to ask for something unreasonable. 3 weeks before her wedding, she delivered the news that would change everything between us forever. "Jordan, I need to tell you something about the ceremony," she began, and my stomach dropped. "Emma can't come? We've decided to make it adults only, and honestly, she's just too young and would probably be disruptive during the vows." I watched my 15-year-old daughter's face crumble as she overheard from the next room, her excitement about being in her aunt's wedding dissolving instantly. The silence that followed Sarah's words felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I set down the towel I'd been holding and walked to the window, needing space to process what I'd just heard. This wasn't the first time my sister had made Emma feel unwelcome, but this felt different, more deliberate, more cruel. Sarah and I grew up in a modest, split-level house in suburban Columbus, Ohio, where she learned early that tears and tantrums could get her almost anything she wanted. As the older sister by 4 years, I became the family mediator, the one who smoothed over Sarah's dramatic episodes and cleaned up the emotional messes she left behind. Our parents, Patricia and Robert, seemed exhausted by Sarah's intensity and grateful when I stepped in to handle her various crises. When Sarah decided she wanted to study communications at Ohio State, I was already working 2 jobs to put myself through community college. But Sarah's dreams always came first in our family. She needed the full university experience, the sorority life, the networking opportunities that would launch her career in public relations. I found myself covering her rent when she spent her money on spring break trips, buying her textbooks when she claimed she was broke after shopping sprees. I told myself this was what big sisters did. After college, Sarah moved to Chicago and built a successful career crafting social media campaigns for luxury brands. Her life looked perfect from the outside, all carefully curated Instagram posts and networking events. Meanwhile, I stayed in Columbus, married my high school sweetheart David, and started building what I thought would be a stable family life. Emma arrived when I was 26, a bright and curious baby who filled our small apartment with laughter. But David struggled with the responsibility of parenthood. He'd disappear for hours without explanation, leaving me to handle night feedings and diaper changes alone. When Emma turned 12, he announced he was moving to Portland with a coworker had been seeing behind my back. The divorce was swift and final. That's when Sarah's subtle exclusions began. Family gatherings became minefields where she'd make comments about Emma's table manners, or suggest that maybe she was too tired for certain activities. When our cousin Beth got married 2 years ago, Sarah convinced the family that the reception venue was too small for children, even though Emma was the only child in our extended family. Emma spent that evening with a babysitter while I attended alone, feeling hollow and disconnected from the celebration. The pattern became clear over time. Sarah was embarrassed by my single mother status, by the visible proof that my life hadn't followed the perfect trajectory she'd crafted for herself. When she started dating Marcus, a corporate lawyer whose family owned vacation homes in the Hamptons, the exclusions became more frequent and more pointed. Marcus' family represented everything Sarah had always wanted: old money, social connections, and a lifestyle far removed from our middle-class roots in Ohio. During their engagement party last spring, I watched Sarah introduce herself to Marcus' relatives as his fiancé who worked in luxury brand management. When they asked about family, she mentioned our parents but somehow forgot to mention that she had a niece. Emma had been so excited about the wedding. For weeks, she'd practiced walking slowly and gracefully, imagining herself as part of the ceremony. She'd asked me to help her pick out a dress that would be appropriate for a church wedding, and we'd spent a wonderful Saturday afternoon shopping together, trying on different options and talking about how beautiful Aunt Sarah would look in her gown. But as I stood in my kitchen that afternoon, listening to Sarah's cold explanation about Emma being too disruptive, I realized what was really happening. This wasn't about Emma's age or behavior. This was about Sarah's shame over the life I'd built, the choices I'd made, the daughter I was raising as a single mother. The truth hit me like a physical blow when my cousin Beth called later that evening. "Jordan, I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "Sarah told Marcus' family that you don't have any children. She's been saying you're focused on your career and haven't settled down yet. She's completely erased Emma from the family narrative she's presented to them." The morning of Sarah's wedding dawned bright and clear. the kind of perfect October day that photographers dream about. I woke up to find Emma already dressed in jeans and a sweater, sitting at our kitchen table with her sketchbook open. She was drawing intricate patterns, her pencil moving in careful strokes across the page. "We don't have to pretend today is just another Saturday," I told her, settling into the chair across from her with my coffee. "We can acknowledge that something important is happening, even if we're not part of it." Emma looked up from her drawing, and I saw the careful composure she'd been maintaining since the phone call 3 weeks earlier. "Can we go to the art museum instead?" she asked. "I've been wanting to see the new contemporary exhibit." We spent the morning wandering through the galleries at the Columbus Museum of Art, Emma, stopping frequently to study technique and composition in paintings that caught her attention. She had an artist's eye, inherited from my grandmother who had painted watercolor landscapes well into her 80s. Watching Emma analyze brushstrokes and color choices, I felt a fierce pride that had nothing to do with anyone else's approval. My phone buzzed constantly throughout the day. First, it was my mother, Patricia, calling from the church where she was helping with last-minute details. "Jordan, there's still time to change your mind," she said. "Sarah is asking about you. Just come alone if Emma can't make it." Then my Aunt Linda called from the reception venue. "Honey, this is silly," she insisted. "Family is family. You need to put aside whatever disagreement you're having and be here for your sister's special day." My cousin Beth texted from the bridal suite. "The flowers are gorgeous. Sarah keeps asking if you've called back. She's nervous." Each message felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, but I kept my phone on silent and focused on Emma. We had lunch at a small cafe near the museum, sharing a chocolate croissant and talking about the artwork we'd seen. Emma told me about a painting technique she wanted to try in her art class, and I found myself genuinely engaged in the conversation, not thinking about what was happening 15 miles away. But as the afternoon wore on, I noticed Emma scrolling through social media on her phone. Wedding photos were already being posted by relatives and friends. Sarah looked radiant in her vintage lace gown, Marcus handsome in his navy blue suit. The church was decorated with white roses and eucalyptus, exactly as Sarah had envisioned. "She really does look beautiful," Emma said quietly, showing me a photo of Sarah walking down the aisle with our father. That evening, as we sat on our couch eating takeout Chinese food and watching old episodes of The Office, I caught Emma looking at more wedding photos on Instagram. The reception was in full swing, and the posts showed a celebration filled with laughter and dancing. Our family looked happy and complete without us there. "Mom," Emma said during a commercial break, "why doesn't Aunt Sarah want me around anymore?" The question I'd been dreading hung in the air between us. Emma deserved honesty, but she also deserved protection from the full ugliness of adult dysfunction. "Sometimes people make choices based on what they think will make their lives easier," I said carefully. "It doesn't mean those choices are right, and it doesn't mean anything is wrong with you." Did I do something at the last family dinner to upset her? "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. This is about issues Aunt Sarah needs to work through, not about you." We spent the rest of the evening baking Emma's favorite chocolate chip cookies, filling the house with the warm scent of vanilla and brown butter. As we pulled the last batch from the oven, my phone buzzed with a text notification. It was from Sarah's maid of honor, Jessica, and it was clearly meant for the bridal party group chat, but had been sent to me by mistake. "Can't believe Jordan was too jealous to show up tonight. Sarah said she's always been competitive, and that Emma has some behavioral issues that make her difficult to include in family events. Honestly, it's probably better this way." I stared at the message, feeling something cold and hard settle in my stomach. Jealous. Behavioral issues. Sarah hadn't just excluded us from her wedding. She'd created an entire false narrative to justify our absence. She'd painted me as a bitter, competitive sister and Emma as a problematic child, feeding these lies to her closest friends and probably to Marcus' family as well. Emma was in the bathroom brushing her teeth, unaware of the fresh betrayal I'd just discovered. I deleted the message and turned off my phone, but the damage was done. The casual cruelty of Sarah's lies felt worse than the original exclusion from the wedding. The week following Sarah's wedding brought a steady stream of family members calling to express their disappointment in my absence. Each conversation followed the same script. They'd begin by describing how beautiful the ceremony was, then transition into gentle scolding about my failure to attend. and finally conclude with suggestions about how I should apologize to Sarah for causing drama on her special day. My Uncle Tom called on Tuesday morning while I was helping Emma with her algebra homework. "Jordan, I understand you were upset about something, but you really hurt Sarah by not being there," he said. "She kept looking around for you during the father-daughter dance. This kind of family division isn't healthy." What Uncle Tom didn't understand was that I hadn't created the division. It simply stopped pretending it didn't exist. Sarah's honeymoon photos flooded social media throughout the week, a carefully curated collection of sunset dinners and beach walks from their resort in Turks and Caicos. Each post carried captions about starting our perfect life together and surrounded by so much love and family support. The comments from relatives and friends reinforced the narrative that their wedding had been a flawless celebration of love and unity. My mother, Patricia, called every other day, each conversation more strained than the last. "I don't understand what's gotten into you," she said Thursday evening. "Sarah made a reasonable request about keeping the wedding adults only, and you turned it into some kind of personal attack. You're being too sensitive, Jordan. This isn't like you." The accusation that I was too sensitive stung because it echoed criticisms I'd heard throughout my life whenever I'd tried to set boundaries or express hurt feelings. It was easier for everyone to label my reaction as oversensitivity than to examine the pattern of exclusion that had led to this moment. Emma's reaction to the family pressure was more subtle, but equally concerning. Her grades in English and history slipped from A's to B minuses, and her art teacher mentioned during a parent conference that she seemed distracted and less engaged than usual. When I asked Emma about it, she shrugged and said she was fine, but I noticed she'd stopped talking about family events or asking when we'd see relatives again. The breaking point came on Friday afternoon when Emma's school counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, called to request a meeting. "I wanted to touch base about Emma," she explained. "Her teachers have noticed some changes in her confidence level and participation in class. Has anything significant happened at home recently that might be affecting her?" Sitting in Mrs. Rodriguez's office, watching Emma fidget with her backpack straps while explaining that she felt like a problem that people didn't want to deal with, I realized the full scope of damage Sarah's exclusion had caused. My daughter was internalizing the message that she was somehow defective, unworthy of inclusion in normal family activities. When Sarah returned from her honeymoon the following Monday, she called me as if nothing had happened. Her voice was bright and cheerful, full of stories about their resort and plans for redecorating the condo she and Marcus had bought in Chicago. "We got you and Emma some beautiful shell jewelry from the hotel gift shop," she said. "I can't wait for you to see the wedding photos." The photographer captured everything perfectly. The casual assumption that we could simply return to normal felt like another slap. Sarah seemed genuinely surprised when I brought up her lies to Jessica about Emma's behavioral problems. "Oh, that," she said dismissively. "I was just trying to explain why you weren't there. People were asking questions and I had to say something. So you chose to say that my daughter has behavioral issues. Jordan, you're making this bigger than it needs to be. I was protecting you by giving people a reasonable explanation for your absence." The conversation ended when I hung up on her, something I'd never done before in our 34 years as sisters. But I was finally understanding that Sarah's version of protection involved throwing Emma and me under the bus to preserve her own image. The real shock came the following Tuesday when my cousin Beth called with information that changed everything. "Jordan, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I think you need to know," she said. "Sarah and Marcus are putting an offer on a house in your mom's neighborhood in Columbus. Sarah's been talking to Patricia about changing her will to make sure the inheritance goes to responsible family members who make good choices. She's been implying that your lifestyle and Emma's behavior make you unsuitable guardians of family assets." The audacity of it took my breath away. Not only had Sarah excluded Emma from her wedding and lied about us to justify it, but she was now working to exclude my daughter from future family inheritance. She was systematically erasing Emma from every level of family belonging, from social events to financial security. That night, after Emma went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table and made a decision that would change the trajectory of our family dynamics forever. I couldn't control Sarah's behavior or her lies, but I could control my own response. It was time to stop being the accommodating older sister who absorbed the family's dysfunction and start protecting my daughter with the same fierce determination Sarah used to protect her own interests. November arrived with its usual flurry of holiday planning. and my mother's phone calls took on the familiar tone of Christmas coordination that had marked our family traditions for decades. Patricia called on the first Tuesday of the month, her voice carrying the assumption that our October drama had been resolved through the simple passage of time. "Jordan, I need to start planning Christmas dinner," she said. "Sarah and Marcus will be driving down from Chicago on Christmas Eve, and I want to make sure we have enough seating. Will you and Emma be bringing anything special this year?" The casual expectation that we'd simply show up and resume our roles in the family Christmas tableau felt surreal after everything that had happened. "Mom, I haven't decided what we're doing for Christmas yet," I replied. "What do you mean you haven't decided?" "We always have Christmas dinner at my house. It's tradition." That word, tradition, hung heavy between us. I thought about all the family traditions we'd maintained over the years. Emma setting the table with my grandmother's china, Sarah arriving late and expecting the meal to be delayed for her convenience. Everyone pretending that the various tensions and resentments simmering beneath the surface didn't exist. Sarah's texts throughout November carried the same breezy assumption that our family dynamics would snap back into their familiar patterns. She sent photos of Christmas decorations she was considering for her new house and asked for my opinion on wine pairings for holiday entertaining. Her messages contained no acknowledgement of our last conversation or any awareness that relationships might need repair after the wedding debacle. Emma's approach to the coming holidays was more cautious. She asked tentative questions about whether we'd be seeing the family, whether Aunt Sarah might want to see the pottery piece shed made in art class, whether Christmas would be different this year. I could see her hoping for normalcy while bracing herself for more exclusion. My own feelings about Christmas were complicated by a growing awareness of just how much invisible labor it'd been carrying in our family system. For the past 5 years, since my father's death, it'd been managing my mother's finances as a way of helping her navigate retirement. What had started as occasional assistance with insurance paperwork had evolved into comprehensive management of her investment portfolio, bill paying, and tax preparation. I'd never thought much about this arrangement because Patricia seemed grateful for the help, and I had the bookkeeping skills from my freelance accounting work. But as I sat at my computer on a quiet Sunday afternoon, reviewing her year-end financial statements, I began to see patterns that disturbed me. Sarah had been borrowing money from Patricia throughout the year. Not small amounts for emergencies, but significant sums that added up to nearly $25,000. Money for the wedding venue deposit when Marcus' family contributions fell through. Money for the down payment on their house when their combined savings proved insufficient. Money for Patricia's portion of wedding expenses that had spiraled beyond the original budget. What troubled me most was the casual nature of these transactions. Sarah would call Patricia directly, explain her need, and the money would be transferred within days. There were no formal loan agreements, no discussion of repayment schedules, no acknowledgement that this money was coming from Patricia's retirement savings and emergency fund. I discovered this pattern while reviewing Patricia's accounts to prepare her annual tax documents, something I'd been doing as part of my regular financial management responsibilities. The family trust fund that Patricia had established for grandchildren's education had been depleted by these loans to Sarah, money that was meant to secure Emma's college future. Emma's acceptance letter to the prestigious Interlochen Summer Arts program arrived on a Thursday afternoon in mid-November. The program was exactly what she needed to develop her artistic talents, but the cost was $8,000 for the 6-week intensive session. As I read through the details, calculating whether we could afford it, I realized that Emma's educational opportunities were being limited by Sarah's unpaid borrowing from family funds. That evening, I made a series of phone calls that would set the stage for everything that followed. First, I contacted the attorney who had helped Patricia establish her family trust years earlier. I needed to understand my legal responsibilities as the trustee and what options I had when family members were misusing trust funds. The conversation was enlightening. As trustee, I had not only the right but the obligation to protect trust assets from inappropriate use. Sarah's borrowing, while informal, constituted a breach of trust if Patricia wasn't mentally competent to make such decisions, or if she was being manipulated into funding inappropriate expenses. My second call was to Patricia's financial advisor, whom I'd been working with to manage her investment portfolio. I needed to understand the full scope of her financial situation and whether the recent outflows to Sarah were jeopardizing her long-term security. The advisor confirmed my concerns. Patricia's retirement savings had been significantly depleted over the past year. and her monthly budget was becoming increasingly tight as a result of the informal loans to Sarah. If this pattern continued, she'd be facing financial hardship within the next few years. My third call was to the bank where Patricia held her primary accounts. I needed to understand my authority as power of attorney for financial matters and what steps would be required to restructure her accounts to prevent further unauthorized borrowing. As I hung up the phone after these conversations, I realized I held more power in our family financial structure than anyone, including myself, had fully understood. For years, it'd been quietly managing the complex web of accounts, investments, and legal documents that supported our family's financial stability. My efficiency and competence had made me indispensable, even as my contributions had been taken for granted. The quiet change I was planning would force everyone to recognize not just the value of my work, but the consequences of taking my contributions for granted while simultaneously excluding my daughter from family belonging. Sarah's assumption that she could erase Emma from family life while continuing to benefit from my financial management was about to be tested. On the last Friday of November, I sat down at my computer and began preparing the documents that would reshape our family dynamics forever. It was time for everyone to understand what they'd been taking for granted and what they stood to lose through their treatment of Emma and me. December 20th arrived with the kind of bitter cold that makes Cleveland winters legendary, but I felt oddly warm as I finalized the documents that would change everything. Emma was at school, unaware that her mother was about to execute a plan that would demand accountability from our entire family system. The first document was my resignation letter as trustee of Patricia's financial accounts, effective January 1st. After 5 years of managing every aspect of her financial life, from bill payment to investment oversight, I was formally stepping back. The letter detailed my reasons: concerns about inappropriate use of trust funds, my need to focus on my own family's financial security, and my recommendation that Patricia work with a professional financial management company going forward. The second document was a detailed financial report showing all of Sarah's borrowing over the past year, complete with dates, amounts, and stated purposes. The total was staggering when laid out in black and white: $27,000 in informal loans with no repayment schedule, and no acknowledgement that this money represented Patricia's financial security. The third document was a formal request to transfer Emma's education fund to a separate account under my sole control as her parent. This money, originally contributed by my father and grandmother specifically for Emma's future educational needs, would no longer be accessible for family loans or emergencies. My fourth action was scheduling a meeting with Thompson Financial Management, a firm that specialized in estate planning for seniors. Patricia would need professional guidance to restructure her accounts and establish appropriate boundaries around family borrowing. It'd be recommending their services and providing them with comprehensive documentation of her current financial situation. Emma arrived home from school to find me wrapping her Christmas presents in the living room. We'd decided to have our own quiet Christmas morning before any family obligations, and I'd bought her art supplies she'd been wanting: professional-grade watercolor paints, handmade paper, and a portable easel that would allow her to paint outdoors during the coming spring. "These are beautiful, Mom," she said, running her fingers over the smooth wooden easel. "Are you sure we can afford this?" "Your education and your talents are the most important investments I can make," I told her. "I want you to know that your future is secure, no matter what else happens in our family." That evening, I drove to Patricia's house with my resignation documents and financial reports. She answered the door in her Christmas apron, flour dusting her hands from the cookie baking that had become her holiday tradition. "Jordan, honey, I wasn't expecting you," she said, ushering me into her warm kitchen. "I was just making those snickerdoodles Emma loves." "Is she with you?" "She's at home working on homework," I replied, settling into the familiar kitchen chair where I'd sat for countless family conversations over the years. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." I spent the next hour walking Patricia through the documents I'd prepared, explaining each decision carefully and answering her questions about what this transition would mean for her daily life. Her initial reaction was panic as she realized how completely she'd come to depend on my management of her financial affairs. "Jordan, I don't even know how to log into my bank accounts online," she admitted. "You've been handling everything for so long. I don't understand how any of this works anymore." "That's exactly why you need professional management," I explained gently. "I've been doing work that requires licensing and expertise, And it's not fair to either of us for me to carry that responsibility without proper support systems. The conversation about Sarah's borrowing was more difficult. Patricia became defensive, explaining that Shed wanted to help Sarah start her married life on solid financial ground. She said Shed pay it back once they got settled. Patricia insisted. It's not like she took the money and disappeared. Mom, that money came from Emma's education fund, I said quietly. Sarah has been funding her new life with Emma's college money, and there's no plan for repayment. The stark reality of this statement hung between us. Patricia's face crumpled as she understood the implications of what had been happening. In her desire to help Sarah achieve her dreams, she had been sacrificing Emma's future opportunities. Christmas Eve morning, I delivered copies of all the documents to the extended family members who needed to understand the changes taking place. My Aunt Linda received a packet explaining why I could no longer manage family financial matters. My cousin Beth got documentation of the trust fund issues that had necessitated my resignation. Uncle Tom learned about the professional financial management services Patricia would be transitioning to in the new year. Each delivery included a personal note explaining that these changes were necessary to protect both Patricia's financial security and Emma's educational future. I wasn't angry or accusatory in my communication, just clear about the boundaries I was establishing and the reasons behind them. Sarah received her packet via certified mail at her Chicago address, since she and Marcus wouldn't be arriving in Columbus until late Christmas Eve. Her documents included the complete financial analysis of her borrowing, along with a formal request for a repayment plan to restore Emma's education fund. Christmas morning in our house was peaceful in a way it hadn't been for years. Emma opened her art supplies with genuine delight, and we spent the morning setting up her new easel in the sunny corner of our living room. No complicated family dynamics to navigate, no walking on eggshells around Sarah's moods, no pretending that problematic behaviors were normal. My phone remained turned off until noon, when I finally checked the 17 missed calls from family members who were beginning to understand the scope of the changes I'd implemented. Patricia's panicked. Voicemails revealed that Shed tried to pay her monthly bills online and realized she no longer had access to her accounts. Sarah's increasingly frantic messages showed her growing awareness that her financial safety net had been removed. But instead of feeling guilty about the chaos I'd created, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction of knowing that my daughter's future was secure, and that the people who'd been taking advantage of my competence would finally have to face the consequences of their choices. The phone calls could wait. Emma and I were going to enjoy our peaceful Christmas morning, knowing that this year, for the first time in a long time, we were celebrating on our own terms. December 26th dawned gray and cold, but the storm outside was nothing compared to the emotional hurricane that was about to engulf our family. My phone began ringing at 7 in the morning with Sarah's number flashing on the screen. When I didn't answer, she called back immediately. Then again. I was making coffee and watching Emma sketch at the kitchen table, both of us still in our pajamas and enjoying the lazy post-Christmas quiet, when Sarah's sixth call finally prompted me to answer. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she screamed into the phone, her voice so loud that Emma looked up from her drawing with concern. "I just tried to transfer money from Mom's account for our mortgage payment, and the bank says the account has been frozen. They're telling me I need authorization from some financial management company I've never heard of." "Good morning to you too, Sarah," I replied calmly, walking into my bedroom so Emma wouldn't overhear the conversation. "How was the rest of your Christmas?" "Don't give me that innocent act. You know exactly what you've done. Mom called us at 6 this morning crying because she can't access her own money. Marcus' parents were supposed to meet us for brunch, and now I have to explain why my family is having some kind of financial crisis." The irony of Sarah's concern about appearing dysfunctional to Marcus' family wasn't lost on me. I resigned as Mom's financial manager. I explained matter-of-factly. She needs professional help to restructure her accounts and establish appropriate boundaries around family borrowing. Family borrowing? Are you insane? I haven't borrowed anything. Mom offered to help us with some expenses. That's what families do for each other. $27,000 over the past year, Sarah. Most of it from Emma's education fund, with no repayment plan and no acknowledgement that you were spending my daughter's college money. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds before Sarah's voice returned, smaller but no less angry. That money was just sitting there not being used. Emma's only 15. She has years before college. And when she's ready for college, her fund will be empty because you decided to use it for your house down payment. My mother called an hour later, her voice shaky with panic and confusion. Jordan, I've been on the phone with the bank for 45 minutes, and they keep transferring me to different departments. I don't understand these new security measures. I just want to pay my electric bill. Patricia's helplessness was heartbreaking but also revealing. For years, it'd been protecting her from the complexity of modern financial management, handling everything from online banking to investment rebalancing. She'd become so dependent on my assistance that she couldn't perform basic account functions without help. Mom, the financial management company will have someone at your house this afternoon to help you set up new systems, I explained. They'll teach you how to access your accounts and manage your bills. You'll have much better support than I could provide. But I don't want strangers managing my money. I want you to handle it like you always have. I can't continue to manage your finances while family members are using your accounts like their personal bank. I replied. Emma's future was being sacrificed to fund Sarah's lifestyle choices, and I won't allow that to continue. The calls from extended family members began around noon, each one following a similar pattern of confusion and criticism. Aunt Linda was mystified by my sudden decision to abandon family responsibilities. Uncle Tom accused me of creating unnecessary drama during the holidays. Cousin Beth tried to mediate, suggesting that we could work out the financial issues through family discussions rather than involving outside professionals. What none of them understood was that this wasn't sudden at all. It'd been building toward this moment for years, watching my daughter's needs be dismissed while my own contributions were taken for granted. The wedding exclusion had simply been the final catalyst for changes that were long overdue. Emma noticed the tension in our house as the day wore on. Even though I tried to shield her from the family crisis I'd precipitated. Mom, why does everyone keep calling? She asked during lunch. Is something wrong with Grandma? Grandma is fine, I assured her. Some family financial arrangements are changing, and people are adjusting to new systems. It's nothing for you to worry about. But privately, I was watching Emma's confidence bloom as she worked on a watercolor painting with her new supplies. Away from the subtle criticisms and exclusions that had marked our family gatherings, she was relaxed and creative in ways I hadn't seen in months. My decision to step back from family dysfunction was already benefiting her emotional well-being. The real explosion came at 4 p.m. when Sarah and Marcus arrived at my house without warning. Through the front window, I could see Marcus pacing on my porch while Sarah rang the doorbell repeatedly. Emma looked up from her art project with alarm. Stay in your room while I handle this, I told her, answering the door to find my sister's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. We need to talk, Sarah announced, pushing past me into my living room. Marcus followed, looking uncomfortable but determined. This financial nonsense has gone far enough. You're going to fix whatever you've done to Mom's accounts, and you're going to do it today. I'm not fixing anything, I replied calmly. I've resigned from managing Mom's finances because the current arrangement wasn't working for anyone. It was working fine until you decided to throw a tantrum, Marcus interjected, speaking for the first time. Sarah told me about your jealousy issues and how you've been causing problems since the wedding. This financial manipulation is just another way for you to punish her for having a successful life. The accusation of financial manipulation was particularly galling coming from someone whose lifestyle was being subsidized by my mother's retirement savings. Actually, Marcus, I've been preventing financial manipulation, I said. Your wife has borrowed $27,000 from my mother with no repayment plan. Most of that money came from my daughter's college fund. Those weren't loans, Sarah protested. Mom offered to help us get started. She said family should support each other's dreams. And what about Emma's dreams? What about her college fund that you've been treating like your personal checking account? Emma will be fine. She's smart enough to get scholarships. Besides, she probably won't even go to college. She'll probably just want to do art or something. The casual dismissal of Emma's future and the assumption that her artistic talents made higher education unnecessary revealed everything I needed to know about Sarah's true feelings toward my daughter. This wasn't about wedding logistics or family dynamics. This was about Sarah's belief that Emma's needs were less important than her own desires. I have documentation of every transaction, I said, walking to my desk and pulling out copies of the financial reports Eid prepared. Would you like to review the evidence of your borrowing before you continue claiming these weren't loans? Marcus' face changed as he scanned the detailed financial analysis, clearly seeing for the first time the extent of Sarah's dependence on Patricia's money. The down payment for their house, the wedding expenses, even some of their furniture purchases, had been funded through transfers from my mother's accounts. "Sarah, what is this?" he asked quietly. "You told me your mother was contributing to our expenses because she wanted to help. You didn't mention anything about borrowing from other family members' funds." "It's not other family members," Sarah said defensively. "It's one fund that Mom controls, and she has the right to use it however she wants. It's Emma's education fund," I corrected. "Money that was specifically designated for my daughter's college expenses. Money that you've spent on your house and your wedding while simultaneously excluding Emma from family events and telling people she has behavioral problems." The room fell silent as the full scope of Sarah's actions became clear. She'd been systematically erasing Emma from family life while simultaneously stealing from Emma's financial future. The cruelty of it was breathtaking in its calculated selfishness. Marcus set down the financial documents and looked at his wife with an expression I couldn't quite read. "We need to leave," he said quietly. "This conversation isn't going anywhere productive." As they reached my front door, Sarah turned back with one final attempt at emotional manipulation. "I hope you're happy," she said. "You've destroyed Christmas, humiliated me in front of my husband's family, and turned Mom against me. All because you can't stand to see me succeed. I hope Emma's college fund gets restored," I replied. "All $27,000 of it, with interest." After they left, I found Emma sitting on her bed, her new sketchbook open but empty. "I heard yelling," she said quietly. "Was that about me?" "It was about money," I told her, sitting beside her on the bed. "And about making sure your future is protected. Am I really the problem in our family, Mom?" The question broke my heart because it revealed how deeply the family dynamics had affected her self-perception. "You are not the problem, Emma. You are the most important thing in my life, and anyone who can't see your value doesn't deserve a place in our world." That evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she surprised me with a question that showed her wisdom beyond her 15 years. "Mom, are you scared about what happens next with our family?" "I'm not scared," I told her honestly. "I'm hopeful. Sometimes families need to be shaken up before they can become healthy again." New Year's Eve arrived with a phone call that would mark the beginning of genuine healing in our family relationships. Sarah's voice was different when she called that morning, smaller and less certain than I'd heard in years. "Jordan, I need to apologize," she began, and I could hear the difficulty in her words. "Marcus and I have been talking since Christmas, and am starting to understand some things about my behavior that I didn't want to see before." Emma was in the living room, working on a large watercolor painting of winter trees, and I could see her glance up when she heard me say Sarah's name. The past week had been peaceful in our house, but I knew Emma was still processing the family upheaval and wondering what it would mean for her relationships with extended relatives. "I spoke with a therapist yesterday," Sarah continued. "Marcus suggested it after we had some difficult conversations about honesty in our marriage. She helped me recognize that I've been projecting my insecurities about our family background onto Emma, and that's not fair to her or to you." This acknowledgement was more than I'd expected, but I waited to hear whether Sarah's recognition of the problem would translate into concrete action to repair the damage she'd caused. "I wrote a letter to Emma," Sarah said. "A real apology, not just an excuse. I want to send it to her if you think that would be okay. I also want to set up a repayment plan for the money I borrowed from Mom's accounts. Marcus and I looked at our finances, and we can pay back $5,000 immediately, and the rest over the next 2 years. The offer was significant because it represented actual sacrifice. Sarah and Marcus would need to adjust their lifestyle and delay some of their plans to restore Emma's education fund. It was the first sign that Sarah understood the real impact of her choices. "What changed your mind?" I asked. Marcus' sister asked him about our family dynamics after Christmas dinner. She wanted to understand why my niece wasn't included in our wedding and why there was so much financial drama. When Marcus tried to explain using the things I'd told him about Emma's behavior and your jealousy, his sister pointed out that none of it made sense. She asked why a successful, educated woman like you would be jealous of anyone, and why a 15-year-old would be considered too disruptive for a family wedding. I could imagine how uncomfortable that conversation must have been for both Sarah and Marcus, having to confront the logical inconsistencies in the narrative Sarah had constructed to justify her treatment of Emma and me. His sister also mentioned that she remembered Emma from our parents' anniversary party 2 years ago, and thought she was delightful and mature for her age. Marcus started asking more questions about why I'd been so negative about Emma, and I couldn't give him good answers. Patricia called later that afternoon with her own news about the changes taking place in our family system. Thompson Financial Management had spent 3 days helping her reorganize her accounts and establish new procedures for managing her money. For the first time in years, she had a clear picture of her financial situation and professional guidance for maintaining her security. "Jordan, I owe you an apology," she said. "I didn't realize how much work you'd been doing to manage my affairs, and I didn't understand that Sarah's borrowing was affecting Emma's future." The financial advisor explained everything to me, and I'm ashamed that I let this situation develop. Patricia had also been working with the new financial management team to establish a formal trust structure that would protect Emma's education fund from future family borrowing. The remaining money in the account, combined with Sarah's repayment plan, would ensure that Emma's college expenses were fully funded. "I want Emma to know that her education is a priority for this family," Patricia continued. "Not just college, but also that summer art program she got accepted to. The trust will cover all of her educational expenses, including artistic development opportunities." The call that meant the most came from Emma herself, after she'd read Sarah's letter that arrived by overnight mail. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten on Sarah's personal stationery, and it contained the kind of honest accountability that Emma had needed to hear. Sarah acknowledged that Emma had never done anything wrong, and that the exclusions from family events had been based on Sarah's own issues rather than Emma's behavior. She apologized for lying about Emma to other family members and committed to correcting those false narratives. She also expressed genuine excitement about getting to know Emma better as a person rather than seeing her as an inconvenience or embarrassment. "Mom, can I call Aunt Sarah?" Emma asked after reading the letter twice. "I want to tell her about my art program acceptance and maybe send her a picture of the painting I'm working on." Watching Emma navigate that phone conversation, hearing her excited voice as she described her watercolor techniques to Sarah, and listened to Sarah's genuine enthusiasm about her artistic development, I felt something shift in my chest. The fierce protectiveness I'd been carrying for months began to soften into cautious optimism about our family's capacity for growth. The extended family's response to the changes took longer to develop, but gradually relatives began to understand the necessity of the boundaries I'd established. Uncle Tom called to apologize for criticizing my financial decisions before understanding the full situation. Aunt Linda admitted that she'd been uncomfortable with Sarah's treatment of Emma, but hadn't known how to address it. Cousin Beth thanked me for forcing the family to confront issues that had been festering beneath the surface for years. My new career as an independent financial consultant developed naturally from the skills I'd been using to manage family finances. Word spread through my network about my ability to help families navigate complex financial and estate planning challenges, and I found myself with more client opportunities than I could handle. The irony wasn't lost on me that stepping away from managing my family's dysfunction had opened doors to helping other families create healthier financial relationships. My experience with setting boundaries and protecting individual family members' interests became valuable professional expertise. Sarah and Marcus hosted dinner at their house, with Emma given a place of honor at the table and genuine excitement about her presence. Patricia beamed as Emma showed everyone photos from her summer art program and talked about her plans for applying to college art programs. But more than the surface changes, there was an honesty in our family interactions that hadn't existed before. Sarah's therapy had helped her understand the insecurity and competition that had driven her exclusionary behavior. Patricia had learned to recognize and resist manipulation in family financial requests. Emma's confidence had bloomed as she experienced genuine acceptance and support from extended family. The life lesson that emerged from our family crisis was more profound than it expected. It always believed that keeping peace and absorbing dysfunction was the loving thing to do. But protecting Emma's dignity and future had required me to disrupt that false peace and demand accountability from people who'd been taking advantage of my accommodating nature. Standing up for what was right had been uncomfortable and scary, but it had also been liberating. Emma learned that she deserved respect and inclusion, not as a favor but as her birthright within our family. I learned that my competence and contributions had value that didn't require me to accept mistreatment in return. Our family emerged from the crisis stronger and more honest than we'd been in years. The relationships that survived were built on genuine respect rather than obligation and fear. And Emma's future was secure, protected by both financial planning and the knowledge that her mother would always fight for her place in the world. Sometimes the most powerful action isn't dramatic confrontation, but quiet competence and the courage to stop enabling others' destructive behavior. Sometimes love requires us to shake up the systems that aren't serving the people we care about most. And sometimes the best gift we can give our children is the example of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, and even when others don't understand. As I watch Emma thrive in her art studies and prepare for college applications, I'm reminded that protecting her dignity and opportunities was worth every uncomfortable conversation and every relationship that had to be restructured. She knows now that she matters, that her dreams are valuable, and that someone will always fight to protect her place at the table. Family isn't just about sharing blood or maintaining traditions. It's about creating spaces where everyone can flourish and be their authentic selves. It's about ensuring that love is demonstrated through action, not just words. And it's about having the courage to demand better when the people we love deserve more than they're receiving. What about you? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love from family members who were treating them unfairly? How did you find the courage to stand up for what was right, even when it meant disrupting family peace? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with others who might need to hear this message about family boundaries and protecting the people we love. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult family situations. Thank you for listening to this journey of discovering that sometimes the quietest actions can create the most powerful changes, and I wish you the courage to protect the people and values that matter most in your own life.